In trigonometric ratios, they are ratios comparing the two sides of a right triangle. Sine and cosine ratios are ratios that compare specifically a leg length and the hypotenuse of a right triangle. We can remember that using SOHCAHTOA. Sine equals opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent equals opposite over adjacent. When we look at our triangle and you're being asked to determine sine, cosine, or tangent, the first thing you want to do is you want to circle your angle. Then you want to look at what information you have. This side would be opposite angle A. Our hypotenuse is always across from the right angle, and adjacent is the leg that connects our angle and the right angle. Now, the sine equals opposite over hypotenuse. The cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Now, in this problem, we're asked to find the sine of Q and the sine of R and the cosine of Q and the cosine of R. So let's look at Q first. Here we have Q. The opposite of angle Q is 21, and the adjacent to Q is 72. The hypotenuse is 75. Now, the sine of Q equals opposite over hypotenuse. So 21 over 75. We can simplify this by dividing by 3. 21 divided by 3 is 7. 75 divided by 3 is 25. Or you can put it directly into the calculator. And when you do that, you're going to get 0.2800. And we go 4 places because the directions tell us to write it as a decimal rounded to 4 places. Now, the cosine of Q is adjacent over hypotenuse. So adjacent to Q is 72 over the hypotenuse, which is 75. If you choose to simplify that, divide by 3. You get 24 over 25. Divide it in the calculator, and you're going to get 0.9600. Now let's look at angle R. Our opposite to R is 72. Our adjacent to R is 21. So now we want our sine of R is going to be opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite is 72 over 75. We divide that, we're going to get 0.9600. Our cosine of R is adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is 21 over 75, and that's going to be 0.2800. If you notice, the sine of Q and the cosine of R have the same answer. And the cosine of Q and the sine of R have the same answer. Now, when you're talking about complementary angles, sine and cosine of complementary angles are related. For example, the sine of an acute angle is equal to the cosine of its complement. Remember, complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. So in other words, the sine of A is equal to the cosine of 90 minus A, which is cosine of B. The sine of B is equal to the cosine of 90 minus B, or the cosine of A. Likewise, the cosine of an acute angle is equal to the sine of its complement. In other words, the cosine of A equals the sine of 90 minus A, which is the sine of B, and the cosine of B is equal to the sine of 90 minus B, which is the sine of A. So if we were to say, write the sine of 42 in terms of cosine, we would look at what do we need to make this 90 degrees. 90 minus 42 is 48 degrees, so it would be the cosine of 48 equals 90. Likewise, what would we need to make 81 90? We would say 9. So it would, to write the cosine of 81 degrees in terms of sine, we would say that the sine of 9 degrees is your answer. Remember that the sine equals opposite over hypotenuse. The cosine equals the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Now, let's find the value of x and y, and we use sine and cosine to do that. First, circle your angle. So we want opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite over hypotenuse is sine, so the sine of 52 equals x over 8. Now, to get this equal to x, you're going to multiply both sides by 8. This will give you 8 times the sine of 52 equals x. So in your calculator, type 8 sine, it'll open a parentheses, 52, close the parentheses, and that will give you x equals 6.3, because we're rounding our answer to the nearest tenth. Next, we're looking for the cosine of 52. The cosine of 52 will give us y. So the cosine of 52 equals the adjacent over hypotenuse. Multiply both sides by 8. Into your calculator, you will put 8 cosine, opens a parentheses, type 52 and close your parentheses, and that's going to give you y, and y will equal 4.9. Next, we need to find the hypotenuse. So we are going to use, first of all, 34 degrees. We have the opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. So we are going to take the sine of 34. We use sine because we have opposite and hypotenuse, equals 12 over y. Multiply both sides by y, leaving us with y times the sine of 34 equals 12. Then divide both sides by the sine of 34. This cancels, leaving y equals 12 divided by the sine of 34. So into your calculator, put 12 divided by sine. It opens a parentheses, type 34, close the parentheses, and your answer will be y equals 21.5. Sine equals opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Use a special right triangle to find the sine and cosine of a 30-degree angle. So if we use a 30, 60, 90-degree angle, we're trying to find the sine and cosine of the 30-degree angle. Now remember, this side is x times the square root of 2. This side is x, and this side is 2x. Now, we are going to find the sine of 30 degrees. The sine of 30 is opposite over hypotenuse. So that is x over 2x. These two will cancel, leaving a 1 on top. So the sine of 30 equals 1/2. Then we're going to find the cosine of 30. The cosine of 30 is adjacent over hypotenuse. So that gives us x times the square root of 2 over 2 times x. The x's cancel, leaving us the cosine of 30 equals the square root of 2 over 2. When we learned about tangent, we learned about angle of elevation. Now we're going to talk about the angle of depression. The angle of depression is the angle that a downward line of sight makes with a horizontal line. So if my little person is standing here, and here's his line of horizontal line of sight, and we're zip lining with some friends, we're preparing to leave a 300-foot platform. So up here, this is 300 foot. Got our right angle. To the nearest foot, what is the distance from the takeoff platform to the landing point? The landing point has an angle of depression of 25 degrees. We'll pretend that that's a right angle. So this is 25 degrees. This is 300 feet, and we want to know the distance. So we say the sine of 25, because it's 25 degrees, equals opposite 300 over hypotenuse, x. So we're going to multiply by x x times the sine of 25 equals 300. We need to erase that extra 2 we accidentally wrote. Now divide both sides by the sine of 25. So x equals 300 divided by the sine 25. Put that into the calculator. X will equal 710 feet.